So welcome back, everybody. Just a quick overview of what we've covered up to this point, particularly for those who have just tuned in. So this is our second day of the conference, and this is today's focus on the national and international scope of food systems, the food revolution, the global food revolution, and also food justice as well. So we started off this morning with Dr. Justin Varney, Dr. Chris Van Tucken, and Sarah, who gave us some insights from their specialist points of view. We then explored the work that's going on with our partners and from the Birmingham Food System team on the UK urban food networks, but also our work with Milan, with Eurocities, with the Sustainable Food Places and others. We then heard from Cecile from the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact on the work that they do and the cities that are involved and the opportunity for people to learn more about that. We then had a fantastic panel on the global food justice movement and on what global food justice is, opened by Dr. David Nabarro, and then a panel of experts from across the food sector, all giving their point of view and their research and their knowledge. And it was a fantastic discussion, which brought us up to now, into lunch. And just after lunch, we have come back to what will be an incredibly exciting panel, looking forward, and the call for action panel. So on this panel, we've got people from across the food system space, from across different expertise and different backgrounds. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment so we can see all our lovely panelists right now. And then what I'm going to do is introduce each one of our panelists, who will then have 10 minutes or however long to introduce themselves, their organisation and where they come from, but also why they believe, a call to action for the room for how to kind of make sure our food system is fit for the future. So we've got a lot of speakers to get through, so I'm going to get straight into it. So we've got about 10 minutes and then we'll have a bit of a panel discussion at the end. So our first speaker is Professor Martin White. So Professor Martin White is the lead for the Mandala Consortium and from the MRC Epidemiology Unit at the University of Cambridge. He's an industry leader in the public health and food system arena and leads the research on population health interventions programme. As the lead for the Mandala Consortium, which focuses on the city of Birmingham, they're exploring, I don't want to take too much of the steam from Martin, but they'll be exploring lots of incredible planetary and population health related projects to the food system, and brings together universities of Cambridge, Birmingham, Warwick, Exeter, and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So I will hand over to Martin.
Okay, thanks very much, Bradley. So for those who don't know me, my name is Martin White. I'm Professor of Population Health Research at the University of Cambridge. Thanks very much for inviting me. Delighted to be here. I work in the MRC Epidemiology Unit at the University of Cambridge, where I lead research on food system transformation. My background is in medicine and public health, and increasingly I've focused on food and the food system, diet and health, and mostly now really focus on how we can change the food system. So our group's been involved in a number of key studies recently over the last few years, primarily evaluating interventions at a national level involving the food system. So for example, we conducted a national evaluation of the soft drinks industry levy, the sugar tax, mandatory calorie labelling, and we also have funding to evaluate the 9 p.m. watershed on TV advertising of unhealthy foods when that is eventually introduced. So we focus very much on trying to support government by evaluating the policies that appeared in the childhood obesity plan. More recently, though, we've secured large grants from UK Research and Innovation, the main government funding stream, to start to generate evidence on how we change the entire food system. We have a large grant, which is called the Salient Programme, which focuses at a national level, and we're working with 6 government departments to trial a number of interventions in the commercial food sector. And then the other one is the Mandala Consortium, which is focused on Birmingham. We're interested in urban food system transformation. So we've been trying to work very closely with Birmingham on that. So I'll just say a little bit about the Mandala Consortium. We've been working for a couple of years with the food system team in Birmingham at the council. and trying to support and complement what they've been doing in developing the food strategy there. We have spent the first 2 years really trying to understand the food system in Birmingham, taking it apart sector by sector to try and understand how different sectors work, how the systems work, and what we could do to bring about changes in those sectors that would promote healthier diets and more sustainable diets. We are focusing, we're tending to focus more at the consumer end of the system, but in doing so, we know that we will be wanting to focus on interventions that will have profound effects on the system. In other words, ones that might also influence the supply side of the food system. So maybe just to give you some examples, we're working with large catering companies, looking at how food delivered to citizens in Birmingham, ready to eat in catering, might be changed in order to benefit the planet in particular. So we're looking at a particular institutional context for that intervention. And we're working with a national catering company that works in that context. So in doing that, we're having quite detailed negotiations with the company and with the institution on what would be acceptable changes to the food that's served there every day at lunchtime and so on. And looking at ways that can be changed so that it's more sustainable. And then we'll be measuring, when that intervention eventually gets delivered, we'll be measuring outcomes of that intervention. So we'll be measuring before, during, and after the intervention. And we'll be looking at changes in what foods are purchased, looking at the changes in the composition of those foods, using that then to assess the healthiness of the diet and the sustainability of the diet. And we'll be doing that by taking the changes that we observe in what people eat and putting those into large computer models to work out what their likely impacts will be on population health and on planetary health. So looking at impacts on, for example, carbon footprint, biodiversity impact, and so on. So that's one example. And we have been working with a number of other sectors, the grocery sector, both supermarkets and convenience stores. And we've also been working extensively with the community food sector as well. I thought I would maybe just finish by mentioning, just in terms of describing what we're doing, a few challenges that we've met with. I think the first thing to say is that in working with this government funding, we have been pushed into working in different ways. So in the first instance, they very much asked us to bring together a range of scientific disciplines that have not previously worked together. So we have climate scientists, we have public health scientists, we have economists, we have people who are knowledgeable about the business sector, and we have people who are particularly knowledgeable about things like supply chains and so on. So bringing together this kind of interdisciplinary mix has been quite challenging. We work in different ways. Getting to know each other took a while. I think a second challenge is that we want to evaluate interventions that are worthwhile, interventions that are likely to bring about change in the food system for the long term. And first of all, identifying those powerful levers in the food system is by no means easy, and that's taken quite a while to do. And then secondly, we found the challenge that actually getting the commercial sector to work with us is quite challenging. And secondly, getting those who are willing to work with us to trial interventions that are actually meaningful is hugely challenging. And we're still, that is for us still a work in progress. I think this is the first time this has really been done in the UK. And so, we're kind of breaking new ground and trying to deal with these challenges as they come along. But I think it's important to say that this is not easy work to do. Certainly in my career, this is one of the most challenging things I've had to do. But I think that it's worthwhile. We may find that with some bits of the commercial sector, we are unable to evaluate interventions that are as powerful as we would like or that we would recommend. But nevertheless, by evaluating those interventions, which industry is willing to try out, if we show that they're not effective, then we can provide results which are really valuable to government. So we can say to government, look, you asked us to do this, we've tried to do this. This is as far as we can see industry is willing to go. And these are the challenges we've met against. And therefore, from a policy point of view, we need to think about alternative ways of going about this. So I think whatever we find, if we find things are really successful, that'll be great. But equally, if we find things that are unsuccessful, I think there could be really important learnings from that as well. I haven't been looking at my clock, but I'm pretty certain I've spoken for getting on for 10 minutes, Bradley. So I'm happy to stop there. You asked in your email about challenges from our perspective at a sort of higher level and opportunities and solutions. And I'm happy to talk about those when we get to the panel discussion.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thank you, Martin. And yeah, definitely that'll be the starter for us to get the panel going and getting all the different viewpoints. But thank you for the insight. And it has been incredibly exciting working with the Mandala Consortium, and Martin's helped to facilitate a lot of the groups that we'll be hosting during the workshop sessions next week, getting the experts and the researchers and the academics into the right spaces. It's incredibly useful. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to our next speaker. So our next speaker is Alex. So Alex Dole is the head of public policy at Uber Eats UK and Ireland. And as most people on the call will probably be familiar, Uber Eats is one of the leading food and produce delivery companies in the UK, but also around the world. And Alex has been kind of key around driving and informing that policy and taking the organisation through sustainability, nutrition, and lots of other innovative developments as well in recent times. And Uber Eats is often or Uber generally is often at the leading edge of innovation and change. So it's exciting to have him on board and to hear his viewpoint. So over to you, Alex.
Thanks very much, Bradley, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. So nice of you to assume everyone has heard of Uber Eats and uses it, but just in case people haven't, I thought I'd just do a little kind of intro into who we are. We are one of the largest food delivery platforms in the UK. We cover around 90% of the population, providing access to over 63,000 restaurants, grocers, and supermarkets. And I think if there's one thing to take away from today about Uber Eats, excuse the pun, that really wasn't intentional. Over 60% of those businesses are SMEs. So not only, the small and medium-sized businesses, which are the lifeblood of the communities they represent, but also, really at the heart of our business as well. And I think I wanted to kind of emphasize that point because it's especially relevant for what I want to talk about today. Obviously, I'm minded this is the Birmingham food strategy launch. So a bit about ourselves in Birmingham. We launched here in 2017. Since growing to support, I think, over 3,000 restaurants in the city, with another 1,000 in the West Midlands. And that's a blend of kind of big, high street brands to local favourites as well. And as as really the lifeblood of our business, we look to celebrate SMEs in two ways. We actually have something called the Black Business Fund, where we distribute grants of up to £250,000 a year to small Black-owned businesses across the country, helping them to kind of get the financing they need to grow their business. And more recently, we actually held our second annual Restaurant Awards, where we recognise small restaurants and independent restaurants from across the country for the contribution they make. The overall winner gets a prize of 100 grand, but I wanted to mention it here because there were actually two finalists from the local area. So Natalie Francis of Doreen's Kitchen in West Bromwich won Female Chef of the Year, and Rashpal Singh, who owns and is a chef at Taste from India in Dudley, won the Community Impact Award. So look, I'm from the West Midlands. I know those areas aren't Birmingham, but if you're nearby at some point, I would suggest you kind of go and visit. And again, those prizes are not just for the quality of the food they serve, but for the contributions they make to the community. So thanks for indulging me in that divergence. The reason I wanted to kind of make those points is because we take great pride in supporting our partners, and especially our SME partners, and I think it's especially relevant for today. When it comes to healthier food systems and healthy eating, look, I think we know when people think of food delivery apps like Uber Eats, they think fast food. It is part of our offer. We're not kind of shying away from that. But I think what's really interesting is the way people's use of apps like ours has evolved over time. So some of the largest cuisine growth we've actually seen has been across coffee and vegan, for example. So the number of vegan restaurants in the app has increased massively in recent years, and drinks orders, especially coffee orders, account for a bigger and bigger share of food delivery platform orders overall. So I think the traditional view of people, just using Uber Eats for a burger on a Friday night is actually changing and evolving. And we are seeing people increasingly using apps like ours to access a greater variety of food. I think nonetheless, given our scale, we recognise there's always more to do, and we ourselves have an important role to play in creating a healthier, more sustainable food system. So in terms of what we're doing at the moment, I think there's some things we've done in the short term to make it easier for people to make healthier choices. So we've actually audited and enhanced the representation of healthier food in our promotions and marketing campaigns. So that doesn't mean you're never going to see a burger and chips in Uber Eats advertising, but it does mean those kind of traditionally less healthy foods aren't overrepresented. And we have a burgeoning grocery business, so that it accounts for more and more of our sales. And through that, we've launched a scheme called Fresh Mondays, so users can get 50% off fresh fruit and veg when they order it on Monday. So again, those are examples of how kind of usage of platforms like ours is changing. But look, we want to go further, and I think one of the ways we're thinking about this is how can we offer incentives to restaurants on our app to offer healthier options, and then if they do that, can we increase their visibility and things like that? We keep coming up against the same problem, and that's that incentivizing restaurants to provide more healthy food, and I'll keep doing these quotation marks just to make the point, requires restaurants to understand the calorie content of food, the nutrient profile model, a score of food items on their menu, and then where possible look to reformulate those food items. Those things are obviously really, really important because we need to ensure that meals that are branded healthy are actually healthy. However, we keep coming up against this challenge, and I think this is where I kind of want to pick up on this idea of identifying 3 challenges and what I think the opportunities could be for our discussion. So the first challenge is around this: defining healthy, and finding a definition of healthy food that is scientifically robust enough that it has credibility, but accessible enough that any restaurateur or chef is able to implement it. Some do, but many SMEs don't have the capability or the resources to calculate calorie content or the NPM score of their food items. So when we're talking about these issues in policy terms, we're actually excluding a large swathe of food businesses from the conversation. So the opportunity for us, and one of the things we're doing at the moment, we've partnered with the British Nutrition Foundation, whose objective as a charity is to give people access to reliable information on nutrition. And we want to develop our own, we're calling it a definition, but really it's more like a checklist of actions that restaurants can take to make their meals healthier. So the things we're looking at the moment are things like, the temperature of the oil used to fry food, portion sizes, proportion of fruit and veg on the menu, even ensuring the staff have appropriate training in how to cook healthy food. The key for us, because we're thinking about this in terms of the SMEs on our platform and elsewhere, is are these actions easy to implement? So can SMEs make these changes and still kind of grow and thrive as business? So in order to develop these actions, this checklist, we're holding focus groups with restaurants. We've held one in London, and we actually recently held one in Birmingham working with the West Midlands Combined Authority to kind of check with restaurants themselves. Which ones do you respond well to? Which actions are just completely impossible for you to do? And I think once we've finalised that checklist, we're really keen to run a pilot with some restaurants where they adopt these criteria. We look at the impact they have on customer behaviour. What's the impact on the restaurant's operations, and fundamentally, what's the impact on the restaurant's bottom line? Because that's going to be critical for them. And then, our hope is we can take those learnings and look to build something at scale. But this comes on to the second challenge, I suppose, which is incentivization. So once we've addressed this gap around a definition of healthy, how can you get these restaurants to feel motivated to take these steps and adopt it? And it's not because they don't care about this issue, I think we all recognise many restaurants, especially SME restaurants, are operate. They're relatively low margin businesses where changing ingredients or cooking methods can have a big impact and create uncertainty. The other interesting thing is I think restaurants also believe customers are less interested in these options. So we've done our own research that shows something like 56% of SMEs cite a lack of customer demand as a reason why they don't offer healthier options. So again, we see an opportunity here as an intermediary between these food businesses and customers to help change this. So we're, as well as looking at our checklist, we're looking at what incentives we can offer to restaurants to get them to take these steps. So they can be things like Uber Eats offering additional marketing spend to restaurants that adopt our healthy checklist, or promoting them to more eaters as well, or even looking at supply side changes. So can we use our scale to negotiate wholesale discounts on healthier ingredients? Because again, we've seen that can be a bit of a barrier for SME restaurants. So those are the kind of things our pilot will be looking at. And I think just to kind of finish on the third challenge, which I think is everyone will probably make this point, and it's probably been made throughout the 2 days, but we all know the causes of obesity are complex, and that no one actor can solve them alone. So while we're doing this, and we're really excited that we're taking these steps, we know that on its own it's not going to be enough. So I think the challenge is, how do we join the dots between initiatives like these and others happening, in different parts of the food system to maximise their impact? So I think that's about working together, and the example of us as a business, Uber Eats, working with the British Nutrition Foundation, but also then bringing policy levers into it. How do we work with local authorities like Birmingham? How do we work with the government? And just to finish, I guess an example. So I talked about wanting to run this pilot maybe next year, and then how do we deliver this at scale? I think we can offer incentives and promotions to restaurants on our app to do take steps to offer healthier food, but really we need government policy levers it can pull to help SMEs to offer those healthier options. So maybe we're not at the stage yet where we're making recommendations to government, but the things that could be looked at, maybe it's supply, making it easier to get like supply side reform, so cheaper wholesale healthier food items, or maybe it's adopting criteria like the ones we're developing and looking to establish that as a kind of government-backed brand of standard that restaurants can aspire to. So that's kind of where we're at, and really looking forward to discussing this with the rest of the panel.
Thank you, Alex. And yeah, it's fantastic that an organisation like yours is coming to the table to work with local authorities, with researchers, with local industries to be able to shape these moving forward and shape these steps. And it does tie into those kind of some of the work that's going on from different people who are on the panel today, and ties quite nicely into our next speaker, as you mentioned, around that national role and lobbying government and being able to do those government levers. So our next speaker is Anna Taylor. So I had the luxury of introducing Anna yesterday, but I've got a different introduction for Anna today. So Anna Taylor is the Executive Director for the Food Foundation. Anna is a national and international visionary, often driving the food system change from the city level to the national level and into the international space as well. So Anna's worked in lots of international platforms, whether that's UNICEF, the Department of International Development, and many, many more, and has been a fantastic ally to the city of Birmingham, and I've probably worked with most of the people on the call today as well. So yeah, over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much. These intros get better and better, Bradley. Thank you very much indeed. And it's fantastic to be here on day 2 of this exciting moment for Birmingham. I'm the Executive Director of the Food Foundation, and for those of you that don't know who we are, we work to try and make it easier for everyone to eat a diet which protects their health and the environment, but we do that by really focusing on the food system and the environments in which people are making decisions about what to eat. So we do a lot of work that's policy facing as well as business facing. And so what I thought I would start with today is talking a little bit about what we're doing at the national level and how it interfaces with what's happening in Birmingham. And maybe I should also just say, by way of introduction, that we are very proud to have been part of Birmingham's journey getting to this point, supporting where we can on the work that's been evolving in the city and the leadership that's being developed. And also, we're also members of the Mandala Consortium that Martin talked about. So doing quite a lot of the sort of engagement work within that research consortium in Birmingham. So those are sort of two Birmingham specific connections, but I wanted to zoom out really now and talk about the national work and how it interacts with what's happening in the city. And thought it would be useful to start with just basically laying out the key areas that we are pushing for change for at the moment at the national level, whether that's with national government or with businesses. And what we're really interested in is how we can get to a point where you've got national change happening in concert with local change, because obviously there are different levers of power in those, or levers for change, if you like, whether you're in a local setting in comparison to a national setting. And often it takes a very long time to deliver change at the national level, and local leaders can be more agile and move faster. And I think what we're really interested in is how we can get the complementarity of pushing on both fronts at once, hopefully to deliver faster change. So what we're doing at the national level at the moment is really focusing on three main areas. So the start of where our starting point is, we want to make it easier for everybody to eat well, and that is particularly including those who don't have very much money. And we've seen the cost of living crisis have a really very serious impact on many people's ability to be able to put food on the table, full stop, but also put nutritious food on the table. So at the national level, we've been engaging national government in a few areas. One is making sure that getting to a point where benefits are calculated with the cost of a nutritious diet in mind, rather than at the moment, it's really unaffordable for people who are on dependent on benefits to be able to afford the government's recommended diet. But then also we put a lot of energy into what we call the nutritional safety nets for children. So free school meals and Healthy Start, two national programs which combine a kind of financial transfer, essentially an indirect financial transfer to families, but also wrap that up really in some extra nutritional sort of bang for buck, so what we've been trying to do is to campaign for the government to expand the eligibility of both of those schemes so that more children who are living below the poverty line can benefit. Because at the moment they're so narrowly targeted. There are many children who fall just outside the criteria, but could really hugely benefit from those two schemes. So that's the piece about essentially putting more resources into families' pockets to be able to get access to nutritious food. Then we're really concerned about the food environments in which people are making decisions about what to eat. So that's everything from kind of the marketing, availability and relative prices of different foods. So even if you've got money in your pocket, you're then making decisions about what to eat generally in an environment which is pushing you towards less healthy choices. So we do quite a lot of work around the marketing and advertising of junk food, and obviously been pushing for some of those regulations to be introduced, which have been developed at the national level but have been delayed. But in addition to that, we've just launched a new campaign in partnership with others called Recipe for Change, which is around the fiscal measures needed to be introduced to try and tackle what was described in the National Food Strategy as the junk food cycle. So this kind of set of commercial incentives that are built into the system, which mean that it's much more profitable to promote and have at low cost foods which are high in sugar and salt and fat. So we're proposing a range of different options for some fiscal measures that would tax some of those unhealthy ingredients, tax the manufacturers of products that use those ingredients, and use the revenue generated from that tax to invest in some of these really important nutritional safety nets that improve access to healthy foods for lower income communities. And then finally, we do a body of work which is aimed at businesses directly, recognizing that the space for businesses to maneuver in is, with these very strong commercial incentives acting against them, is quite small. And therefore the role of regulation is really important in creating a level playing field. But we do think there's some things that businesses can do in the absence even of that regulation. And what we focused on particularly is setting clear targets and disclosing data on sales, and particularly the healthiness of companies' food sales, and also the ratio of plant to animal protein that's being sold, because that's obviously in line with thinking about the route to net zero. And so we've done a lot of work with companies to try and develop the metrics that would allow companies to set targets and report progress on delivery of those targets. We see this as a really essential precursor really to a proper conversation about what's needed to transition diets in favour of health and sustainability. In the absence of really knowing which companies are moving in the right direction and how fast they're moving, it's very difficult to design the right policies needed to accelerate that shift. So we see that as a real litmus test of a company that is serious about moving in the right direction in terms of dietary transition. And we also think there's some stuff which supermarkets can do right here and now to help families with the cost of living, and we've set that out in our kids' food guarantee. So this is really diving into particular categories that children are dependent on, and making sure that if families are trading down in price because of the pressures that they're facing, they're not in turn trading down in health terms. So that's what the kids' food guarantee is all about. And we've got supermarkets are looking at some of the areas of that kids' food guarantee and working out what they can do to meet it. So that's the sort of very broad overview of what we're doing at the national level. By way of call to action for those that are on the call now, I'd say if you want to get involved or keep track of those national campaigns, do sign up to our newsletter on our website. And also we have panels of young people and adults who've had experience of food insecurity themselves, who inform and support a lot of our campaigning work. And if there are people on the call today who are interested in getting involved in the work from that perspective, more as an activist, we'd really welcome hearing from you. Then to end with the final challenge, the big challenge I think we're entering into a pre-election period. And the big challenge that we have at the moment is that food policy has been dragged very strongly into culture war territory. So we had an announcement from the Prime Minister the week before last that he wasn't going to introduce a meat tax. There's never been discussion about a meat tax. I mean, it's just like it was a sort of made up fake tax that was then cancelled. So we've seen it with meat. We've seen it with all other areas. I mean, all the conversations around multi-buys and so what food is being used to do is to draw some of the battle lines in electoral terms between different parties and what they stand for. That's a significant moment of jeopardy, I think, for really thinking about what progressive food policy looks like and trying to actually open up the political space for action rather than shut it down, which is what seems to be happening a lot at the moment. And so I think one of the big things that we are really trying to do in all of our engagement in the run up to the election is to really get people thinking about what are the reasons why our diets are so poor now, and to really help people think beyond this very strongly ingrained personal responsibility narrative, i.e. it's up to you what you eat, you're free to eat what you like. Rather than actually recognizing the facts that there's this complex mix between our biology and our environment, which at the moment is set against us. And it's very difficult for people to get out of that. themselves, and they need a more enabling environment that will allow them to do so. And we've heard there was a very interesting report from the Institute for Government which really laid out the sort of failure of obesity policy in particular over the last few decades, because it's been really focused on an incorrect diagnosis of the problem, and that's that this is, you know, somehow we really need to just motivate and give people lots of willpower and education so that they can get themselves out of this problem, rather than changing the environment around them. That's the key challenge at the moment from our perspective. And if we can help to make that argument more strongly in the different conversations we're all having, that's all about opening up the political space for a more progressive policy agenda in this space. Thanks. Thank
you, Anna. And yeah, if Letitia, if you can put your Food Foundation's link into the chat so people can register with the newsletter. But it is interesting to hear that throughout today, and actually yesterday as well, that drumbeat of actually, it isn't a individual problem, it is a system problem that we need to policy, we need to research, we need to make sure that we actually change from the system top level, rather than trying to tell people to make better life decisions, because that obviously hasn't worked and will not work, because it's so much more than that. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our next speaker, who will be Alexia. So Alexia Robinson is the founder and director of Love British Food. She's a champion of rural communities, farmers and producers. It was her idea to create the first British Food Fortnight back in 2001, and it has gone from strength to strength, which is all around encouraging people to buy local. So Love British Food sit on the public sector catering industry group, and it's the only farming and food representative in that group, which is a fantastic space to be in. And there's so many more achievements. Do check out the website, Love British Food. It's completely enlightening. So yeah, it's great to have you here today, and I'll pass over to Alexia.
Oh, Bradley, that was a lovely introduction. Thank you very much indeed. It is a complete privilege and joy to be part of this. I think Birmingham's ambition is just terrific, and talk about leading by example. Let's make it happen in Birmingham, and then let's inspire the whole country to follow. So thank you very much indeed. Yes, I'm the founder of Love British Food, which is an umbrella organisation that a number of other organisations work with me underneath. Everything from Breaks to Sodexo to Premier Foods to the Hereford Cattle Society to the Women's Institute and the National Trust. And we all work together. Really, I'd say the motto is to make good food available to all. And in doing so, to give our farmers and producers confidence that there is a robust domestic demand for their produce, so that they are encouraged to continue to farm, to continue to invest, to continue to innovate, so that we produce more than our 60% food security number that we all herald, and we can all achieve the things that we are talking about on this webinar today. As part of this, I run British Food Fortnight, which is a very jolly national food celebration that takes place every autumn and has just finished. And I also organise the National Harvest Service, which I mentioned simply because after we founded it in Westminster Abbey, which was the first time they had a harvest celebration there for half a century, we took it to Birmingham, and it was terrific. It was in 2014. I just can't tell you what a happy day it was. And we filled the whole of the area around Birmingham Cathedral with farm animals and tractors, and it was great, and perhaps something that could happen again in the years ahead. Gritty things we do. I've published the first guide to teaching children about food within the existing national curriculum, working with the Department of Health and the Department for Education, that went out to 35,000 schools 3 years running. In a similar vein, we have discussions with the Centre for Social Justice, who brought in universal credit. They were responsible for that, about the strong need for every family who is on universal credit to be allowed access to free school meals, which is something I feel incredibly strongly about. And I am one of many unheard voices campaigning on that. I sit on the Public Sector Catering Alliance, which is a really happy family of the people who represent our food systems in what I like to see as, I like to think of it as really supplying the most vulnerable in society. That's everything from our children and young people to our elderly, to those who are in hospital recovering from operations and things. They are a very inspiring group, and it's a real privilege to sit amongst them. We've done lots of research into existing supply chains in those sectors, the care sector, hospitals, prisons, NHS. And if anyone wants to understand more about those, I do recommend going onto our website and reading them. It's very enlightening, both about the challenges, but most importantly and really optimistically about the opportunities. I lead two industry groups in this vein. The education, Love British Food Education Working Group, which many of the leading school, college and university caterers sit on, and the Hospital and Care Catering Working Group, which does the same. And our aims are really simple. We've gathered the best in these areas to share their experiences with their colleagues across their sectors, to inspire and enable everyone to aim for providing better food in our schools, our care homes, our hospitals, universities, etc. And as part of that, we organise a programme of a national programme of farm visits, which we've been organising for NHS caterers. We've done 5 farm visits for them now, but actually next year we're expanding to offer these visits for the whole public sector. They are they're terrific days, and very encouragingly something concrete and tangible comes out of each one, of which I'd like to touch upon in a moment. We have quite a nuts and bolts approach to everything we do. This is not ethereal. This is not about, I mean, we all have to do our social media campaigning, don't we? But I view what we do as very much like if you're having a discussion with an electrician about the electrics in your house. And I don't think this is necessarily about rewiring the whole house. I think it's about plugging things in. And I think there is tremendous energy across our country to achieve what we are all talking about today. And it is a matter of somehow linking all of those areas up and giving them the support they need to deliver. And to give an example, when I mean that it's gritty, I've got very bedded in to try and achieve this in the NHS. And it's just fascinating, because to affect change in the NHS, you need to understand that dietitians and catering teams sit in something called soft facilities management. Sustainability officers sit in something called estates. And procurement teams sit in another area of the NHS. And when you're talking about delivering better quality food, somehow you've got to get these teams who literally do not talk to each other to work together on a single solution. And to deliver it is not something that's going to happen at government level. It's something that's going to happen at each trust level. And when you deliver it, as we did, and we continue to work with the Somerset NHS Trust, it is incredibly rewarding. And it is all entirely dependent, not on what I do in running Love British Food, but in finding, and this will apply to Birmingham, it's in finding the natural leader out there in different areas of your city. There will be so many natural leaders, and giving them the support they need to fulfill their vision. And I've always viewed my job as really being the sort of, I don't know, the fairy with the magic wand, trying to seek out these people and support them. And I retain enormous optimism that we can all achieve what we want to achieve. But I think it is us and the other people on this call, and hopefully those who are listening, who will achieve it. I do not believe that government will. And I'm happy to talk about challenges and opportunities and everything else when we open up the discussion to others. Thank
Brilliant.
you, Natalie.
Thank you so much. And it is a fantastic point. I mean, I don't know if you managed to catch yesterday, but one of the things we're doing in the city is the Birmingham Food Legends, and it's this idea that actually it's not going to be the council that are going to deliver. I mean, I would say all of the work. It's going to be those people that have quietly been doing it already, or just want to expand. They want to be able to platform, share their knowledge, share their skills, and just keep growing that momentum, that food revolution, and just begin the change so no one can look away. They're going to have to get on board eventually. So thank you very much. So yeah, I will move on to our next speaker then. So our next speaker is Professor Mandala. Manda is the Director for Centre for the Research in Ethnic Minority Entrepreneurship at Aston University. So CREM was established in 2004 and is a leading centre for business support for business ethnic minority entrepreneurs, and has transformed perception for working people across the city. I mean, I had the chance to go to one of your sessions, Manda, I think it was a couple last year, when Sarah was presenting as well. And it was, yeah, it's just incredible to meet some of the people there. We managed to find some Birmingham Food Legends from that event as well, who have carried on working with us, which is brilliant. So yeah, Manda has been a fantastic asset to the Birmingham food movement and to our strategy, and has fed into a lot of the work that we do. So it'd be great, to hand over to Manda.
Yeah, thanks very much for that kind introduction, Bradley, and thanks for the opportunity to say a few words about our work. So I'm Manda Mondaram. I run the Centre for Research in Ethnic Minority Entrepreneurship at Aston University. We come to this issue as specialists in small firms, particularly small firms run by ethnic minority communities. And the link with the food sector is pretty clear. Many ethnic minorities gravitate to the food sector, not because of an innate interest in sustainability, other than to sustain their own lives in this country, in this city, as careers. It's the only way they can find employment. So they set up their own business, and often many take the opportunity to sort of leverage their cultural advantage by producing ethnic food and running businesses. And this city is a fabulous example of the power of the ethnic minority community in the food sector. It's got very rich in cuisine, and it's ever changing, reflecting the super diverse nature of the city. So my particular interest is, and I suppose question and challenges, are we giving sufficiently enough attention to this topic and the issue of sustainability from the perspective of the business owner and the communities who work in that business? We can have very sort of normative and progressive views about sustainability, but the real structural challenges of making your way, surviving, and in some cases sort of developing in this sector are major constraints on engaging in a progressive way with the sustainability agenda. I'm going to just draw your attention to three features of the food sector, particularly the Bangladeshi food sector. And the focus on Bangladeshi food sector arises from the fact that we've just finished a major 3-year project looking at the Bangladeshi food sector, in particular interested in these businesses, how they operate, and their willingness to change from their business practices and become more productive, and in doing so engage with wider issues of sustainability. And I'm just going to highlight three features that I think are worth drawing your attention to. The first is the estrangement, detachment from the debates that we've been discussing today about sustainability, about position in the market. And what our engagement with the businesses to highlight is particularly in relation to the market. The market is very critical in understanding the extent to which these firms can engage with this agenda and look at progressive ways of operating. So small businesses, and particularly Bangladeshi food firms, have very little power in the market. It's a cutthroat market, and that has a major impact on their capacity to even contemplate more progressive ways of operating. It was great to see delivery platforms on the call, and I'm really pleased to see the progressive work they're doing to support the sector. At the same time, the practices of delivery platforms are being keenly felt and really constrain the capacity of the caterers, certainly the ones we engage with, to do anything other than pursue sort of business models of survival. In the workshop that you attended, Bradley, we brought in over 200, well, nearly 200 Bangladeshi caterers to our place at Aston University, with the aim, the caterers wanted a public platform to speak truth to power, because of the sense of isolation they feel in the market, bereft from public policy support. Very few engage with business support institutions, or let alone universities, and fewer still are actively considering how to upgrade and source in a more sustainable way. So I think if we can talk about sustainability, but we also need to realize in a very clear-headed way the market powerlessness that many caterers feel. My second point I'll draw your attention to is the extent to which there's a willingness to change, to willingness to move to the low wage, low price model that inheres in many of these catering businesses. And I think the sort of perception is cheap curry, and that's how it's going to be forever. Because of COVID, because of a range of market pressures, cost of living crisis, which incidentally we should mention that these generic and profound structural challenges have a disproportionate effect on small businesses and small minority businesses in particular in terms of these businesses being right on the front line, and also in terms of health, suffering disproportionately during the pandemic. These have long-standing effects with these businesses. But nonetheless, and perhaps because caterers, business owners are caught in a pincer movement, there is little option other than to consider more sustainable or long-term ways of operating. And so what we found is that because of the power or the real difficulties of engaging and caused by these structural challenges, and because our close relationship with the firms, we were able to develop conversations about looking at modernization, which we hope in the longer term will lead to a more open attitude towards sustainability. So we were able to introduce them to the power of technology to promote themselves rather than through intermediaries. We took the opportunity to explore more progressive management practices, and also took the opportunity to link them in with intermediaries like the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development to look at higher value management practices. So I suppose the learning point is there is an openness to change, but there needs to be an openness to engage from policy institutions as well. And my sort of final point relates to the broader issue of sustainability. Look at sourcing in a more progressive way rather than looking at the cheapest alternative, sourcing locally. And because of our engagement and because of our, I suppose, fortunate position where we have links with key intermediaries like Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, and most pertinently, the really excellent relationship we have with the Food Farming and Countryside Commission, which has brought to our attention the real potential that exists to link much more closely with farmers, for example. This is not heard of in the Bangladeshi catering sector because they always purchase through intermediaries. But now we're developing relationships with these businesses, where we're broaching these conversations thanks to the support of the Food and Farming and Countryside Commission. We've got a jointly funded PhD, which is actively looking at the scope to affect these more direct and progressive supply chain relationships. And I'll draw my comments to a close, but if these initiatives are to succeed, they really depend on the kind of point the previous speaker just made about having long-term reciprocal relationships, not transactional exchanges that too often businesses like these and communities from diverse backgrounds have to endure. So this commitment to long-term reciprocal relationship, genuine interest in sort of co-production is very important, as is a commitment to start from eliciting and appreciating the lived experience of business owners and the communities that work with them. You know, when we were working with the businesses at the height of the pandemic, you got a real sense that you weren't really dealing with a business, you were dealing with a whole community. And that's borne out by the fact that Bangladeshis were 20 times more likely than their white counterparts to be working in a business in a shutdown sector, and that inevitably was catering. So the link between the economic link between business and community needs to be fully appreciated and more fully than it is. So I think starting from that perspective, there are grounds of hope, but if there is this genuine commitment to long-term engagement, if actually you take the lived experience seriously and you lever your position to draw in intermediaries and colleagues and fellow travelers who can start having the critical conversations that need to take place to pursue the objective that we all want to see come to fruition, which is a much more sustainable way of operating. Thank you.
Thank you, Manda. And yeah, I mean, it's incredibly insightful, and definitely do check out the work that Manda and Krem have done with the Bangladeshi community in Birmingham. I mean, the work is so important for a city like ours, being an incredibly diverse city, but really for the whole of the UK with the kind of changing and growing populations that we have in every city. So thank you, Manda. So our last panelist, who I'm not going to ask to necessarily do another 10-minute speech because he did do our keynote speech this morning, but it is Dr. Justin Varney, the Director of Public Health at Birmingham City Council. And just for those who have logged into the call later, quick introduction. So Justin has to suffer this 3 times over the 2 days. So Justin became the Director of Public Health in 2019 for Birmingham. And over this time, since he took over as Director of Public Health, he has moved the food agenda from a side note to a mainstream food system focus for the city, showcasing the importance of city leaders and working in partnership with researchers, academics, businesses, and so many more at a city level, a UK level, and internationally. So, Justin, I'll open the floor in case you want to reflect on anything that's been said so far, and then we'll move into the Q&As.
Great, thank you, Bradley, and great to be with you all today and amongst such a panel of some faces I'm very familiar with, some I've yet to meet in person in this digital age, but some brilliant reflections, some things that I would draw out that I think really resonated with me. The narrative around the complexity of the food system, which I think the journey we've been on in Birmingham so far and the journey still to come really is one of navigating a multi-layered network of partnerships, of businesses, of communities that Birmingham doesn't exist in this bubble of a city. It is completely connected to the wider West Midlands region and the amazing agricultural offer that surrounds us that we can't grow within our own city boundaries. It connects to a national and an international landscape of food businesses and food supply chains. And of course, communities which operate now in a digital world in which we're continually getting information from all over the world, and that combines both bringing science and fact and myth and fake news, and all of that plays into how we navigate the system. I think the narrative around diversity and collaboration is really important on so many levels of the work as we take this forward. And it is important, I think, to recognise the reason that the food team lobbied so hard to get the strategy called Birmingham Food Revolution, not its original title, is a reflection of this is a movement of change that we are building together as a city, not a strategy that the council's writing to do to the city. And that has to be done through a social movement and a movement of a partnership in which everyone has a part to play, and that enables and empowers the voices that aren't being listened to be heard, that meets people where they're at. And I think particularly I was reflecting as Mondo was talking around the journey we've had through the pandemic period, and we worked with the Asian Chamber of Commerce to provide multilingual advice to our SME, particularly our SME Asian businesses, because we absolutely recognise that they were many of the businesses that continued to operate during the pandemic and didn't have access to guidance and guidelines that were easily accessible to them in their first languages. And that is something that we've continued to commit to moving forward in the work that we do, translating resources and ensuring that however you come to the table in Birmingham, we try and make that route accessible and engaging for you. And that's, you know, a heavy burden to carry, but it is an important one to try and make real as we move forward. I think my final reflection before we go into the discussion is that, you know, no revolution is easy. No revolution happens with everyone holding hands and beautifully singing together and skipping along merrily. There is always bloodshed, there is always argument, there is always factions and fallings out. And you know, as we move from writing to accelerating doing, and we build on the very strong foundations we have in the city, and we use the power of being England's second city to influence change, not just in England, but across the world, that we are compassionate with each other, that we're compassionate as a movement, and that we recognise our strength comes from that diversity. And we are stronger because of it, and because we work together across boundaries, joining hands to truly change our food system to be something which is affordable, diverse, delicious, safe, and ultimately supports all of us to live healthier lives. But I'll hand back to you, Bradley, to get us kicked off with some of the discussion.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So yeah, thank you to all of the panelists for introducing yourselves and for, you know, the eye-opening and kind of thought-provoking introductions that you gave as well. So sorry, to the audience, if there is any questions that you've thought while we were listening to the conversation, do please use the Q&A or use the comments. We have a couple of questions prepped, but it'd be great to get some live questions in. I suppose, so a few of the speakers spoke about challenges and some of the free challenges. So what I would like to kind of focus on, and rather than three, we'll focus down to one, but if there's more than one that you want to talk about, then that's fine. But let's focus, I suppose, on the opportunities, because there is opportunities in this space. That's fine. Sorry, yeah, so just so you know, thank you, Alex, for coming along. Alex has got to go get a flight, so thank you for staying, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really sorry I couldn't stay for the discussion, but happy to pick up anything afterwards. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Bye.
Sorry, so yeah, so if we focus on one opportunity for now, and if there is others, then please add. But just to the whole panel, what do you think is the key opportunity for cities in the UK trying to transform their food system? So what could any city in the UK, or specific cities, if you want to focus in, what could they do in the next year or next 5 years to really change their food system or change it on a bigger scale? So if I start with Martin, since, oh yeah, mic's off already, brilliant.
Okay. So I've prepped some thoughts here already, and because you asked us beforehand, I'll just preface what I was going to say about opportunities just with my 3 challenges, because it'll make more sense then, and I won't go into great detail. They were, firstly, perverse incentives. The economic incentives in the food system are perverse, and they lead us to have a food system that prioritizes unhealthy food. And others have spoken about that. So that's the junk food cycle and so on. That's a big problem. Secondly, risk aversion. We've come up against this in our research, and both governments and industry seem hugely risk averse in terms of changing the system. So that's another challenge. That's another challenge we need to overcome. And then thirdly, I think is the challenge of weak government. We just have government that is not willing to take risks in relation to those perverse incentives and the risk aversion and so on, and that is causing real stagnation, I think, in terms of innovation. So that's hugely problematic. So the opportunities I thought of, and I'm sure there are many more, and I have to admit I did think about this at quite a high level, but I don't think they're entirely without relevance to the city of Birmingham. The first is the general election 2024. As I've intimated there, I think we are at a bit of an impasse with public policy presently, with quite entrenched views, and an increasing dominance of views that I think are rooted in outdated economic models that are not really fit for the 21st century. The current kind of economic model that's driving the food system is the model that's causing the problems we've got, whether it's non-communicable diseases or climate change, and we have to change that. So there's a fundamental problem we've got to overcome. And I think there's an opportunity there with the election and possibly with local elections as well. I don't know. The second opportunity, I think, is that I think we are seeing a major shift in public awareness at the moment. And it could be to do with all sorts of things. I know Chris Van Tulloken spoke this morning, and I don't think anyone reading the newspapers and so on will be unaware that Chris's book has caused quite a stir. It just occasionally you get these things that really capture the public imagination and the media's imagination. And I think the idea that processed foods are bad for you is really taking off and gathering momentum at the moment. It's kind of, this is a moment. Maybe it's like, 2015, we had Jamie Oliver's Sugar Rush documentary, and then the soft drinks industry levy came along and so on. Maybe this is a moment. Maybe this is an opportunity. So I think shifting public awareness is worth bearing in mind. And then I think the third thing I thought of was, if we have got a bit of a movement here, then we need good science to underpin it. And I would say that, obviously, because I'm an academic, but I genuinely think that the evidence that underpins the arguments about ultra-processed foods at the moment is based on one randomized controlled trial in 20 people in a lab experiment. This is Kevin Hall's study in the US. It's a great trial. It's a brilliant piece of science, but I know for a fact that the Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition, government's main committee that advises government, says it's not good enough. It's not good enough science. They need much bigger studies and in real life settings. So there's this kind of scientific challenge of generating the evidence that we need to underpin new policy, and that's what we're trying to do in Mandala. So those are my 3 opportunities.
Brilliant, thank you. Oh, sorry, Justin, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was going to give you your answer, Bradley. I suppose I'll be a bit more concise. I'll just go for one. I think the big opportunity at the moment actually is the challenge that we face in public sector finances. I think it is driving, it's almost like that horrible phrase, don't lose a good crisis. We learned a lot during COVID about how to work with communities. I think the reality that the public purse is under immense pressure and strain, that the commercial business sector is really struggling, that is a space in which innovation can happen. That is a space in which we can drive it. But it also is the space in which you start to talk about sustainable innovation rather than plugging the gap with cash, because you've not got the cash to plug the gap. And that, I think, is the huge opportunity, the environment in which we're now in, is that gone are the days where you could just continually kind of patch it with some more money. We've got to get into a space of sustainable models for food systems, which actually create sustainable economies that enable affordable food at the wages that people are getting from businesses that are sustainable as well. It's this kind of vicious cycle that at the moment is so destabilized. So I think the opportunity actually is that we are in a time of crisis, financial crisis, which is requiring us to not come up with the solution that is simply plug the gap with cash. It is requiring much, much deeper thought, much stronger collaboration, and hopefully a much, much better solution for the future.
Thank you. Alexia?
I can't find that little button that you put a little yellow wavy hand, so I'm really waving.
You can always wave at me, that's fine.
But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the opportunity at the moment when we're talking about the public purse is to move the debate from one about the price of food to the value of food. And I don't need to tell you all what we all see as the value of food, but my understanding, talking to a lot of budget holders, when they are frank and talking off the record, they will say it is not a problem of money. There is masses of money in the system. It is a matter of how it is allocated. And food is still not given the priority and still not valued in the way that we all talk about it. And that is the shift in the debate. And that is the opportunity I see. To use a very simple example, I would love, and going back to what I was talking about the NHS, I would love to see the chief executive of every NHS trust who has on their list of priorities the need to vacate hospital beds quicker and to release healthier people into society, so it puts less emphasis on social care. Well, if food was on that chief executive's agenda, which by the way it is not on hardly, there's only one NHS trust in England I know that food is on the chief executive's agenda, and that's in Milton Keynes. I could be proven wrong with that, but I think I'm right in saying that. But if they understood that food is a part of the patient's recovery, maybe they could allocate more budget to that. Patients would then vacate their hospital beds quicker, be released into society healthier, put less cost on social care. I know that sounds really ethereal, but I think that's, and you can apply exactly the same scenario to schools and education. And I think that's the real opportunity. And you all, I mean, I've literally been hanging on your words. You're so inspiring. And you all have an incredible platform to shift that debate away from price and cost to value and what we really value food as a society.
Thank you. And yes, I agree. It's that wider determinants, isn't it? It's that understanding if we do things at the right point, it has the largest possible ripple effect. And we need to then make sure that we get that across to people that don't have that kind of mindset or be able to see that kind of longer story. Thank you. Anna, do you want to come in on what you think is the big opportunity at the moment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it sort of builds a little bit on each of the other speakers, actually. I mean, I think what has happened in the public discourse over the last, I mean, really since the pandemic, I would say, is that access to nutritious foods for everybody has become, I think it's become widely recognized that many people are not in a situation where they can access nutritious foods. And I mean, if I reflect on before the pandemic, for us trying to get a story in the mainstream media around food insecurity or food poverty, it was extremely difficult. And now we have all the major newspapers picking up on our releases of data around food insecurity, for example, that even what Martin was referring to with the work around ultra-processed food and the extent to which that's in the media, that's also provoking people to sort of recognise some of the challenges around accessing nutritious food that protects your health. That feels to me like it feels like the territory has shifted now so that people don't see food insecurity and obesity as entirely separate problems, but those problems, this is still a bit of a problem, but they are starting to come closer together under the banner of the challenges of being able to afford nutritious foods. And Alexia, I'm not talking about the price of food so much as affordability of food for low-income families. And so I think that is an opportunity. It feels like that conversation in the public sphere has broadened substantially. I mean, if you look at, you know, the campaign with Marcus Rashford around free school meals, for example, we were one of the organisations working with him, and, you know, the speed at which the petition got 1 million signatures. I mean, it was sort of unprecedented that the public would just have a level of concern about this issue, which we didn't see 5 years ago, and it's remained strong. I mean, we're doing, you know, focus groups and polling work now around free school meals and the expansion of free school meals, and the public really want these things to happen. There are even the policies which would determine whether a voter votes one way or another. So those that are in the sort of small swing camp, you know, so I think that feels like a genuine opportunity, and people are, I would say, it's a less divided conversation in the public sphere. It's very divided when it comes to policy. On the public sphere, I think there's a real opportunity.
Thank you. And Monda, what do you think the biggest opportunity is at the moment in our food system space?
Well, being sort of parochial in the Birmingham context, I've been really sort of impressed by the very sort of respectful and deliberative way that the Birmingham food strategy has evolved and been produced. It's generally brought in communities who, as I said in my earlier comments, have been estranged from this debate to our cost, you know, to the cost of the city and particularly those communities. So, and I think if that's, you know, very financially straitened times, but if that's sustained, I think that was to send a really strong message that communities, excluded, previously marginalized communities, feel that they are part of a discourse, part of a conversation, and being part of that conversation could be a mechanism to overcome the sense of powerlessness that I mentioned earlier. So I welcome that. The second, I think the generational change within communities. Birmingham is a very young city. Businesses are changing, evolving, and with that sort of practices will change, but it still does need, so that I think will promote a greater openness and to the kind of debates. But I think it does need investment. I think we do need to invest in maintaining these relationships, and you know, as I said, it's clear that the colleagues on the call who are responsible for the food strategy are doing that. I think in the business support space, and I come to this as a small business specialist, there needs to be that openness too. Too often business support, particularly for small firms, is very what they call euphemistically light touch, where people just get signposted to oblivion. It needs that long-term sustained engagement too. We know from the evidence base that intensive, customized, bespoke support is the only kind of support that has makes a palpable difference to the bottom line. And I think that kind of support could also be the kind of support in which you develop the trust, you have the confidence of business owners to start broaching these deeper issues about sustainability. I don't think we do that in the business support space, and I have really big concerns about that. But on looking perhaps a bit more positively, with the devolution deal that we've got in Birmingham, the City Council will have quite a lot of influence, and the combined authority will have quite a lot of influence in how resources are allocated in the business support space, and they can make the links between sustainability and the survival of the business as well, and this wider agenda that we all want to encourage, that might give us some grounds for optimism.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think, Justin, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to build on Munda's point, and first of all, thank you for the acknowledgement, the gratitude for the work the team's doing, because it is, I think, really brilliant. But I want to just highlight it and reiterate it a slightly different way. We cannot change the food system of the city without the citizens who live here. And you know, I think any city that thinks it can is off on the wrong start. We have to do this through a movement with citizens. We have to do it with a movement with small businesses. You know, this is a city whose reputation in food is tied into small businesses, many of them led by our ethnic communities. You know, whether you believe the Balti was invented here or not, and whether that's a good thing or not, it is inherently tied to the brand of Birmingham as much as Bird's custard powder is. And you know, it is essential, I think, that cities think about that and think about that paradigm when we're in this space. But I think on a national level, and this is where I tread carefully as a civil servant, but I do think we lack in this country and in many countries the recognition of the food sector as a business sector that is as essential to the economy as the digital sector. If we had the same investment in food infrastructure, food business, food entrepreneurship that we see in digital and technology, we would be in a very, very different space when it comes to food businesses and to the food system of the UK. And I would really encourage colleagues watching this to think about that, because the food business sector is so broad and so diverse. And when we talk about it, people immediately go to farming and agriculture, a really important sector that does need to be seen and heard and championed in Great Britain. But it is also hospitality, it is food transformation, it is everything across from where we grow and cultivate food to when we throw it away or upcycle and transform it. And I think a big part of this revolution, where we need partners across the country and across the world, is to champion food businesses and the food business sector as something that is fundamental to economic growth, because that positions us very differently to the change and the revolution we need to see to come.
So if I nod any more, Justin, my head might fall off. I just couldn't agree more. We need to invest to innovate and incentivize those food businesses to do that, and to do that here in the UK, not to move overseas and go and do it over there. And someone earlier in the discussions made the point about the economic link between business and the community. And I think, coming back to what Anna was saying about the harsh reality of the affordability of food, I think so many cities and towns and communities rely on volunteers to address this. We hear again and again about volunteer groups putting together food parcels, distribution good food, etc., etc. And that is lovely, but it is not sustainable. And where we want to go to, is wrapping this up with what Justin was saying, is that small businesses, which is just terrific, the number in Birmingham, that they will see there is a commercial advantage, a commercial incentive to them making good food affordable and accessible for all, so that they're not doing it from the point of view of charity. They're doing it because it actually pays. And there's some discussion at the moment in this country, and I can't remember what the government initiative is called, and it will probably disappear as quickly as it's been talked about, but it's something about every new development is made so that people have 15 minutes walk away from a doctor, a dentist, a school, or whatever. But I would like to add to that everyone's a 15-minute walk away from a fresh carrot. It's and that needs to be built into that. And I do agree, small businesses are the key. And it could be that really visionary person who runs your local Londis who just says, I'm going to step up, and I'm going to step up, and commercially it will pay me to step up.
Brilliant, thank you. And thank you. So unfortunately, we could do this for a few more hours yet. This could have been an entire session, but that is all the time that we've got for the panel. And I appreciate that. I know the panel are incredibly busy and invested in so many different things going on in the city. But I want to thank each and every one of you for spending the last hour and a half or more with us here, sharing your experiences, your passion, your organisations and your knowledge with the room, and for the longevity as well, because this will be going up on our Food Revolution web pages. So we'll be able to keep sharing and keep this conversation going. So thank you all. you are free to go before we just do a quick summary of the session. But thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so as I said, that is about time for the Birmingham Food Conference. It has been 2 days of incredible activity, of energy, of celebration, of challenge. We have heard from speakers across our local system in Birmingham, right from community groups that have been driving real change every single day in everything that they do, whether that's volunteer or paid roles, through to city leaders within Birmingham, within our academic services, within our businesses. We've heard from national and international celebrities. We've spoken to researchers and thought leaders in the food justice space. And then we finished our day off today on our second day with national city leaders on everything from food economy and employment through to the food production and food sourcing and food distribution, through to our wider food innovation data and research area. And I hope you've started to see a bit of a pattern for our 2 days where all of our speakers, whether they're from the international level influence through to our community leaders and champions, have represented every element of the Birmingham food system strategy. They have represented the 10 work streams, or they have represented the 3 key principles and pillars of our system and of our strategy and of our revolution. So I do encourage you to go away and check out the Birmingham Food Revolution strategy, the web pages, the projects, the Legends registration form, and so much more on our website, birmingham.gov.uk Food Revolution. We also want to encourage you to stay in touch with us. So as it was been said quite a few times over the last 2 days, we are just a boundary spanner, a tool for the community, for the leaders, for the researchers, to connect the system together and to help grow the movement that is already happening across Birmingham and the UK and the rest of the world. So to do that, you need to keep in touch with us and keep us knowing what's going on and link us in where we need to be linked in. And you can do that by contacting us at foodsystemph@birmingham.gov.uk, or on the Food Revolution web pages, there is a Microsoft Forms for you to be able to complete. And then on top of that, what we're going to be doing is putting a feedback form into the chat, hopefully. And if not, it will be sending it out in an email. We did have a bit of tech issue yesterday getting it into the chat. So there'll be a feedback form for you to let us know how we got on over the last 2 days. Provide us with your email and contact details so we can stay in touch. But also you'll be able to tell us whether you want to get more involved with what we're doing here locally in the city, what we're doing nationally with our partners, which is the Food Foundation, Sustainable Food Places, Sustain, or what we're doing on an international platform with Eurocities and with the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact and with our partners at the Food Foundation. So again, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of our incredible speakers, to my 2 facilitators that have helped me over the 2 days, so to Sarah Pullen and Leticia Petrovic, but also to the food system team as well, who have been busy keeping everything on track in the background. So Rosie Jenkins, Neve Mellerick and Chloe Brown, who have been very quietly keeping everything going. And we will keep you in the loop with how we get on with the action plan. So that's what we're going to be picking up next week. 20 hours of workshops with over 100 different leaders, community, business, research, national leaders, many of the people you've heard speak today who are going to be diving in deep into the work streams and helping us to create the Birmingham Food System Strategic Action Plan that's going to carry us till 2030 and hopefully drive a lot of what we've spoke about here today from theory into real tangible action. So again, a massive thank you to absolutely everybody who's been involved. Please fill out the forms, please stay in touch. Any of the questions and answers that we haven't got to today, we will get through into email and we'll be sharing them on our website as well. So thank you again, and I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Bye everyone.